that I was able to report that to my computer, I hope. I hope that's what's going on. I'll edit it later if not. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to our biweekly meeting. Tonight, Michael Frayne, referee from the Ohio Valley and United Athletic Conferences, will be leading us through a presentation on how to get the season off to the right foot, getting the first play right. So without further ado, I'm going to turn over to Michael. Michael, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Nick. Give me 1 second to restart screen share. All right. So there are a lot of ways to get ready for the season, but the main purpose of this is to give you all one idea of how to potentially start the season. So I'll give you all a guess as to when this play happened.
Playing quarterback for the Bears, number 1, Daniel Park.
So any guesses as to when that play happened?
It's the first snap.
It was the first snap of our season, and no flag down, potential targeting, and ultimately, regardless of how it was graded, we got back into the locker room at halftime. We talked about that play, and all of us agreed on one thing: we weren't ready for that play to happen during the first snap from scrimmage of the season. So that told us that, hey, maybe we ought to look at our preparation a little bit from the preseason. And so kind of drawing on my experiences from the last couple of years as a referee, preparing my crew, I'll give everybody some ideas, some pointers on what might be a good idea, what might be some good things to prepare yourself for the upcoming season. Now, I'm talking as a referee, what I would like to see, as a referee, what I'd like to see my officials, but also if I were not a referee, if I were a center judge or a back judge in my previous position, what I would do when I was in those positions. So the first thing that I've told my crew now, being ready at any point later than play number 1 is too late. You got to be ready for play number 1. So when does our preparation start? Well, it pretty much starts as soon as the last snap of our season is gone. So we start right at the previous season's end. But our preparation starts by getting away from football. Everybody, there's still football going on when our last snap is gone. But at the same time, we want to get away from the daily grind of going over video, reviewing plays, reviewing rules. You want to spend some time away from football, reconnect with your family, reconnect with your friends, go back to church, but really set an amount of time where you're doing nothing football. 2 to 3 weeks at a minimum. A month is even better. And then once you figure that out, you want to pick a date where you can really jump back into your routine. And for me, it's usually January 1. Okay, we're about to hit we've watched the bowl games, hit the national championship. I can start just very briefly looking at more video, reviewing rules, starting to very slowly get back into my routine. And the first thing you should do is you need to set your agenda. What do you want to accomplish in the offseason? Because if we have goals during the regular season, we also want to have goals for what we can accomplish during the offseason. So what are your priorities? Obviously, you want to continue to review video. You want to keep your eyes fresh. That's the biggest thing. Keep your mind on the game on the field. It doesn't change. Players change, but the game stays relatively the same in the short term. And there's lots of video to find. You can go find clips on YouTube. A lot of DV Sport for those of you who have DV Sport. There's bowl games, there's playoffs to watch. There's football basically through the middle of February that we can watch and we can talk about. And ultimately, you want to have a group where you can discuss a lot of these items. You continue your crew text from the previous season. If you've got a group text or group email of guys in the area, you know, keep the conversation going. Just because you're done on the field for the year doesn't mean you can't keep working. You do want to keep up with rules a little bit, but at the same time, you don't need to go too hard into the rules. You got to remember, rules are going to change before the preseason. And it's not always the rules that you think are going to change. You know, they're going to tweak blocking below the waist, or they're going to tweak targeting or something like that. We didn't know until the rules change came up that, hey, we're going to get a 2-minute warning this year. That was out of the blue for a lot of people. So rules that you don't expect to change may change. So, you know, continue to review enforcement, big picture rules, but don't get yourself into a position where you're reviewing rules that all of a sudden change in April. And if you haven't already, find yourself a regular study group during the off season. This group is good. You know, there are a bunch of them that go all year round. We talk about the nursery group. We talk about 6 o'clock not on the dock for West Coasters. There are others as well, or start one of your own. Find 5 or 6 guys who want to just go over the rules once a month. And then we talk about clinics. Everybody wants to know about clinics. What do you do for clinics? And you need to ask yourself before you choose a clinic, if you're going to go to one, what is your motivation? The primary motivation should be you want to get better. And I know everybody wants to get seen. Everybody wants the supervisors, you know, you want to move up from junior college to Division III. You want to move up from Division III to Division II or Division I. You want to move up from FCS to FBS. There is a time and a place for that. But you also need to have the motivation of getting better. You want to learn more. You want to learn how the Division III supervisors, how the Division I supervisors, how the FBS supervisors want the game of football to look, because that's ultimately what we do as officials. We implement the vision of the game that our supervisors have. Who our supervisors work for? They work for the schools and the coaches. So the schools want the game to look a certain way. The supervisors expect us to help it look that way. And you also have to understand that as you get higher up, some of these clinics will provide diminishing returns. By the time you get to the FCS level, it's expected that you already have an idea of what game of football should look like. You have an idea of what what people should see from a week-to-week basis. And your supervisors also expect you, as you get higher up, to know how to implement that vision, know how to make the game of football look like the game of football. So, you know, be very judicious about if and when you attend a clinic as you get higher up on the ladder. So we talk about priorities off the field. And a lot of the things we don't necessarily discuss so much are very important questions to ask in the offseason. You're off the field in the offseason, so take care of those things that need to be addressed off the field. And the first and the biggest question is, do you want to do this again next year? And for 99% of us, the answer is yes, of course, I want to do this. I love doing this. I'm moving up. But every once in a while, you want to ask yourself, do I want to continue to do this? Do I want to continue to do this at the level at which I'm working? And it's not just that, do I still have the motivation? Do you still have buy-in from your family? Guarantee you got to have buy-in from everybody in your family, because you're making a sacrifice 12 weeks out of the year during the fall. It's a big deal. What about work? What about your home consideration? What about logistics? Do you want to handle all this stuff? Can you handle all this stuff? Is everybody in? Those are questions to ask during the off season, not 2 weeks before the season starts. Any health issues? Do you blow out a knee last year? Did you blow out a hip? Do you have any physical problems that need a little more than just your typical rest and recovery? Now's the time to think about that and ask those questions. And the question that we all ask after is, how's the weight look? Are you putting on a few more pounds than you probably should? This is the time to drop those few pounds. And then finally, once you've decided, yes, I want to work next year, and yes, I can work next year, the question then becomes, okay, what do you want to do next year? Where do you want to work? How do you apply to those conferences? Have you cultivated those relationships yet? Or are you going to be cold calling and freshly applying? And not to say that there's anything wrong with that, but you're going to have, there'll be certain questions to answer if you're making a new application to a conference. You know, a lot of, you can ask any supervisor, the first question that a supervisor is going to ask when they get a new person on the radar is going to be directed at their current supervisor. Why should I hire this guy? And you better hope your supervisor has 5 good reasons why he should. So then, now that we've gotten to the off-field questions, now we're finally moving into what'll be spring football. And really, spring football is the last part of the off season, and this is the time where we figure out how we want the rest of our preparation to look. You know, we figure out what we want to work on, what we want to practice during the preseason. You know, we go to spring games, we go to scrimmages. What levels do you work? Hopefully you're working higher levels in the spring than you are during the fall. Can you keep up with the higher levels? Are you able to keep up with the speed? A lot of the FCS schools, they run at full speed even in the spring. So you get a good taste of how fast that level is. Where did you find some shortcomings in your game? I guarantee you did, because everybody does. Everybody should. What are you going to work on? What did you not like? What did people who worked with you say, hey, maybe you should work on this. Take a look at this. Try this. Correlate and collate that feedback. What feedback did you receive from others? Were there any consistent threads in that feedback? Anything you can really put into practice before the end of the spring season, because if you can start working on the stuff that you want to work on now before the summer break, this is the time to do it. You don't want to be trying things out in week 1. You mostly don't even want to be trying things out in fall spring. So also bear in mind, and this is true for my supervisors, this is true for a number of supervisors, some pay more attention to clinics, some pay more attention to their scrimmages. Find out what is true for where you want to work and make that happen. So if you want to work in the OVC, you go work scrimmages. And people who are running those scrimmages and the staff that are working those scrimmages get back to the supervisor and say, hey, this is a guy you want to keep on your radar. Any questions so far on the off season? So now we transition from the off season to the preseason. It's time to get ready. Time to get ready, prepare for the new season. What are we going to study now? This is the time where we really move into more rules study. Now we have the rules changes. Now we've had our preseason tests and clinic tests. Got that CFO test during the summer, 100 questions, multiple choice. Get ready for it. And now all the study groups have ramped up. You know, this group has been going since at least, I want to say March, if not before then, maybe even before then. So a good goal for studying the rules is you want to learn one new thing about the rules as close to every day as possible. Could be just a little thing. Could be what's the definition of belongs to? Anybody know the definition of belongs to in the rule book? So go look it up. There is actually a definition of belongs to in the rule book, and it has a lot of impact on especially kick plays, free kicks, onside kicks. Rules are important. Continue to study video when possible. Try and get video from the scrimmage and the spring games you worked the past offseason. There's not going to be a lot of that. I'll warn you right now, but if you can find the video and you can look at it, you can look at the stuff that you've been trying to implement already, you'll be better off. And then finally, give yourself an emphasis on new rules, new mechanics, anything that is new for the upcoming season. There's going to be a lot of emphasis on those every year in the clinics, in the tests, I mean, you see in the CFO test, there's 15 questions on new rules and new mechanics every year, guaranteed. So make sure you're reviewing those even a little more heavily than your regular study. Now we get to preseason prep. And in the preseason, a lot of these things, you know, we have muscle memory for these things, but it's always a good reminder. Make sure you plan ahead. Block your conferences, clinic weekend early. Book your travel as soon as you can. Very important things, but you don't want to get caught. You don't want to get caught hanging, and all of a sudden you're paying twice as much as you need to for a flight to wherever your clinic is. Take all your tests early. Make sure you get a passing score. You know, I know too many guys, even at the FCS and FBS level, their crew chiefs email them 2 days before the CFO test is due, and they haven't even looked at it. So don't wait. Take everything early. At least take everything once. Some you get multiple chances on. The CFO test, you get 2 chances on. Take the first chance early. If you pass it, great. Then you've got a little bit of time to review your wrong answers and go over it again and put it in a second time. Don't wait for the 24 hours before the test closing. Assume anything that can go wrong will go wrong at that point. And then respond to calls for availability immediately. Keep your availability updated. Again, this is all officiating 101 stuff, and I don't want to spend too much time on it, but it is definitely worth reviewing, because not that we don't know to do it, but we get complacent as higher level officials. We think, oh, well, this is just a given for us, and then all of a sudden it gets forgotten. I don't want anybody to forget it. And obviously, if one of the bosses asks for something, take care of it. And we want to be good crewmates too. So obviously, crew prep is going to begin during the preseason. My crew has been prepping for at least 2 months at this point. You know, every crew is different, but make sure to set aside some time when you know the crews might have calls. You know, semi-regular evening call, there's some video reviews, text threads, whatever it is. Make sure you set aside that particular amount of time to work with your crew. And when participating in active crew work, be fully engaged. You know, the Zoom calls, it's very easy to put yourself on mute, hide your picture and then work on something else. All of a sudden, when you're called on for a quiz question, you got nothing. So treat the off-field prep on calls as strongly and importantly as any on-field work that you're doing. And then finally, make sure you communicate regularly with your R. For crew items, you won't be able to make a meeting, anything you see, anything you might hear. I guarantee you, we as referees, we love to hear the information. Nothing else, we just love to hear the gossip. So now we've done our off-season prep, and now we're to clinic weekend. Wonderful. Remember, priority 1, you're there to work. Very easy to catch up with everyone. You know, you haven't seen some of these guys in 6 months. It's great. You know, you had a round of golf the day before. Wonderful. But once your butt is in your seat, it's time to work. So adjust your mindset to that once the clinic actually starts. You're there to work. And you're there to learn. So if you were asked to provide anything for sessions, I know our supervisor and our clinic organizers ask for video in advance, pretty much everybody. You know, give it to them well in advance so they can collate everything for their playlists. You know, and not only give them items, give them quality items. Help your fellow officials by providing material that you think will help them learn about certain plays. And then that being said, this is also a time to learn about people. You know, we have in the Ohio Valley and United conferences, we have, I think, between full-time, part-time, replay, and everybody, I think we have about 150 staff members. I don't know everybody, but I make it a point at the clinic to meet, you know, not only the new guys, but also some of the veterans who I haven't had a chance to work with or meet yet. And I met 5 or 6 new guys who had been, you know, who were 10, 15-year veterans in the Ohio Valley just this year alone. And make sure you carve out a good amount of time for your crew as well, especially if you're change crews, you're on a new crew for the upcoming season. You know, get to know them, you know, bond with them. These are officials you're going to be spending a lot of time with in the next few months. So, you know, get to know them now. Get that going. And then we move to scrimmages. You know, this is the time to put it all together. We've been prepping, we've been doing the rules study, we've been going over video, we've been working with our crew. You know, now it's time to put it all together. Approach the scrimmages you're working in the fall with a game mindset, regardless of the speed the teams are using. If they're going thud for their game, their mock game, and nobody's tackling or doing anything, doesn't matter. You are still approaching it as though this is a full speed game. And I still believe that unless schedules don't work out for everybody, you should make every effort to get at least one scrimmage with your entire crew. Get comfortable with what they're doing. Get comfortable with their methods of communication, especially, and I can't emphasize this enough, if it's a new crew. If you're on a new crew, you need to get to know these guys. You may know them from talking with them and conversing with them, but you may not know how they work on the field. And you might have to travel for a scrimmage, and you'll be vastly underpaid if you're paid at all. Live with it. It gets a little better when you move up, but you know what? We've all had to do the scrimmages for gas money and a barbecue burger. We don't do the we don't work this gig for the money, although the money is nice when we get it. So, you know, understand that everybody who's working the scrimmage is trying to spread the misery. And now preseason to play one. Now we're at the point where we get finishing touches. It's almost game time. Of course you're going to be excited. So that being said, try to keep your routine as much as possible. Fly into the city, or you get to the city, grab, you have your pregame routine. Sleep, exercise, hydration, diet. The longer you have to travel, the more important it is that you keep all of that as constant as possible. Don't lose your head. And if your crew didn't get a scrimmage, which is going to happen, you know, as my supervisor says, sometimes you're just going to be coming in hot, but you're going to have to work even harder during the first pregame to make sure everything is covered. So that means you're not going to be, you know, a little less joking around, a little less grab ass, and a little more, hey, it's business time now. Don't go overboard. Don't worry about it. Don't make it the primary focus that, oh, we didn't get a scrimmage, so we've got to do everything. But make sure you're focused the entire time. There's a balance to be struck there. And everything you have to do for the first game, you should have a dry run first. That's what a lot of these scrimmages are for. Even if you don't work a scrimmage with your crew, have a dry run for as much as possible. Your game day routine, your packing routine, anything that needs to be ready to go. You shouldn't be doing anything for the first time during your first weekend. And finally, get to game one, take a deep breath, relax, and have some fun. You spent 8-9 months preparing. You've gone through a big routine. You have so many things you had to get done, and now you finally made it to game one, play one, and you're not going to miss the targeting on play two. Any questions? I'm going to give the referees a few extra items to consider because we have a lot of extra prep to do as referees. These are also good items for anybody who's aspiring to be a referee. So for the off-season prep, I've found that crew is a crew until the new crews are announced. So it doesn't matter, you've had your last game, the crew is still the crew. So keep email chains, keep your text threads active. My crew probably gets sick of me, you know, picking out plays because I'm watching football, you know, after our crew is done. You know, hey, did you see this play in the Rose Bowl? Hey, did you see this play in the divisional playoff? That sort of thing. Keep those conversations going because you're always teaching, you're always trying to help people learn. And similarly, as you get conference news, keep your crew involved, keep them abreast of any conference news. Try to get everyone together to work a spring game if that's how your conference manages it. If you're allowed to pick and choose where you go, call the supervisor, call the site liaison, say, hey, our crew would like to work a spring game, would like to work the entire spring game. Sometimes it'll happen, you know, at least work with some of the crew if you're able to. I was able to work with a few of my crew members this offseason as well. And for referees, in addition to your conference clinic, the CFO usually puts on a yearly national referee clinic. So highly recommend to go every year if possible, especially for Division II and Division III referees. You get a lot of good information on how the game works, especially at the higher levels. And the whole idea is we're trying to continue to move people up as much as possible. And finally, if you're going to any other clinics, which, you know, as you're moving up the chain is still good, don't be afraid to work at referee. There is this outdated idea that supervisors won't know how good you are, won't know that you can work other positions. You know, if you work referee at a clinic, that idea is long outdated. It's probably outdated when I started working clinics, but it still persists. You want to work referee. And if you want to, if you feel most comfortable working referee and that's going to show off your skills the best, then do it. Supervisor will see, hey, you can work football, and they'll ask you, hey, you want to work center judge? Hey, you want to work back judge? Hey, what was your original position? Okay, well, I'm going to hire you at that position. They'll see you work comfortably at referee. So if you want to work referee, go for it. You don't feel like you're going to miss it. And then for preseason prep referees, the big ones, you know, these are obviously big ones, and I could spend an entire call just on ideas for running the crew from preseason to snap one. But the big ones here, once you've gotten your crew, call everyone before sending out an all crew email. You know, even if your crew is seven of the 8 guys or 7 of the 9 other guys are the same as last year, call everybody. Just say, hey, we're rolling it back another year. They'll be happy to hear from you. And that connects you with them immediately. And make sure you are having regular meetings during the preseason. They have to be frequent. Twice a month is a good cadence. You know, we're doing twice a month. One of our meetings was at our clinic, so we didn't have to have a Zoom call, you know, earlier this month. But get them in a regular pace, get them in a regular routine. The more routine we can get to our crews, the better. And similar to that, try and have a crew meeting at the conference clinic, even if you're only for an hour. Get everyone on the same page for the upcoming season. If you have any lingering open questions that didn't get addressed at the previous call, that's a good time to do it. If you're working a scrimmage, that's a good time to confirm logistics, to determine what the schedule for scrimmage weekend is going to be, that sort of thing. But it's good to have a clinic, it's good to have a crew meeting at the clinic just to get everybody on the same page. And if at all possible, have the crew work a preseason scrimmage together. I can't emphasize this enough. Like I mentioned earlier, it might be painful travel-wise and money-wise. Do your best to spread the misery around as equally as possible. That's what I like to say to my crew for pretty much everything. We're going to spread the misery. And finally, as referees, we need to set the tone early for goals and accountability. We can even start that in the off season. As soon as we get our crews, you know, we're going to have this goal for penalties. We're going to have this goal for enforcement. We're going to have this subjective goal. You know, does the game pass the eye test? Whatever your goals may be. And again, that's another thing. You could have an entire session just on setting goals for your crew and individually. But make sure you set the tone early for those goals and set the tone early for accountability and live that accountability yourselves. If you have reasonable continuity in your crew personnel, you know, use last year's goals to inform this year's. That's what we're doing on our crew because we have 7 of the same guys. So we all know how we fared on our goals last season. We're going to try to improve that this season. Really worth, you know, with that continuity, bringing that through year in and year out. Above all else, guys, have a great season. Work hard, be FIU, as they say.
Does anybody have any questions or thoughts, things they'd like to add to the conversation? First of all, Michael, thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
One thing, Michael, that was very well done. Hey, it's Drew Eisen. Good to see you again, Mike.
Hey, Drew.
One thing that we did at the clinic that I thought was really helpful, you know, for preseason was we went through and did all the goals as a crew, individual, like you said, had our monthly meeting, you know, the first night of the clinic there. But we also just did kind of like a personal check-in and kind of felt where everyone was at personally, just so we knew how to go into the season and support each other. So like, for example, I'm moving, start a new job, where I'm gonna be traveling a lot more, getting to the game sites and the scrimmages. Like I just am gonna have to slow down a little bit. And so just letting the crew, know that, or if someone's going through, something unfortunate off the field, a divorce, or their kids are in sports and they're not going to be there, and they're kind of just bummed about that. How do we support those people and kind of get them up? So we took some time just talking about how, what we have going on, how the group can support us, how we'd like to be supported, that type of thing, so that we can go in as a unit and be, the best high functioning crew that we can be getting on the field. So I thought that was something that we did this year. Like you said, we have 9 of our 10 guys. So we have a new replay communicator. So we're all pretty familiar with each other. So this year, that's something that we just added, to our initial meeting at the clinic.
Yeah, I think that's great. Drew makes great points there. We do, to your point, Drew, we do kind of some of the similar thing. We don't set a meeting aside for it, but we actually, whenever we meet or have a call or anything, the first agenda item is always, hey, how are you doing? What's new? Completely unrelated to football. And I encourage people, hey, it could be good or bad. We'll like I continue to mention, we spread the misery around a little bit, but it's also, brag on yourself, brag on your spouse a little bit too. So, that I completely agree, and I can't emphasize that enough.
Other things anybody wants to add? Any suggestions, thoughts? I would say, as somebody moving to a new crew myself, we've had a meeting. Our clinic is structured in such a way that we're only in by position groups, and so our whole crew is not together at the clinic. That's, every clinic is different, right? So you had to deal with that. I think it's really critical, as a line of scrimmage official, that I want to make sure I'm having intentional conversations with my downfield partner and my crossfield partner, right? We pick up the phone, find an opportunity to meet in person if that's a possibility, just to make sure we're level setting, that obviously there are many things that can make a game go bad, not pass the eye test, like Michael said. One of those is your line of scrimmage officials just not being on the same page with spots and things like that. So we want to try to proactively avoid that, because the last thing you want to have to worry about the first week is we're midway through the first quarter, and me and this guy across the field from me are not matching up well. And we'd rather work through those things in preseason and in the offseason to make that work. And I also want to make sure my downfield partner is comfortable. I understand what he needs from me. What do I need from him? We want to make sure we have those conversations ahead of time, so that we don't, like Michael said, we don't want to be surprised right with the kickoff of the first game as to what we're getting. So especially if there are lots of changes in your crew, or you've changed crews or whatever, I think it's really critical to take those intentional steps. Maybe you have to pick up the phone with your referee and find out what they want from you. Those are all kinds of things, right? Don't expect the referees to have to do everything. I would challenge everybody too, that you probably want to be, if you're not the referee, you want to be the referee's go-to person on the field, right? If stuff hits the fan, you want them to go to you to fix the problem. So that goes back to everything Michael was talking about before, about rule study and understanding the mechanics and handling all those things, so that if there's a really weird thing that happens, all right, I'm gonna go talk to Drew. Drew's my guy. We're gonna fix it, because he knows he's gonna be able to pull us out if we got a problem. So
Bingo. And that's another good point you make, Nick. Have a guy or two on your crew who, if something goes sideways with the kicking game, or something goes sideways with, a dead ball foul or something like that, know who your go-tos are for specific situations. It doesn't have to be the same guy for every situation. Know where everybody's strengths are at.
any other thoughts or feedback? Michael, I really, really appreciate you taking the time to present to the group. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, let me do this real quick. I'm going to share the presentation screen here. Hopefully everybody can see this. So you can see where we've been so far. Appreciate everybody's willingness to sign up and present. It's been great. This has been so easy for me to not have to worry about scrambling for people. Our next presentation is in 2 weeks. I'll be doing a presentation on penalty enforcement, both the rules and some of the mechanics to kind of get us in the mindset. Then we'll have a presentation on 26 by Jim Bohr with about 4 backward passes, some IDP and mechanics philosophy of OPI, which is great. And hey, then it'll be game day. That'll be that meeting on the 26th. There'll be some week 0 games for some folks that previous weekend. But then everybody gets going for real that following Thursday and on. And so hopefully after we get to September 9th, the rest of our meetings for the rest of the year will be opportunities for us to share plays and talk like we would if we were in person. So that's what we have upcoming. Keep an eye on the email. I apologize for no quiz this week. This has been the craziest month of my life, traveling all over the place. I think I've been home for about 6 days since July 1st. So if you're here at the NASO Summit, please come find me in my work booth, but whatever, I'll talk to anybody about anything. So thanks for coming tonight. I hope to see everybody in 2 weeks. Have a great rest of your week, and I hope your prep keeps going well. So thanks, everybody. See you later.
You're welcome. See you later. Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you. Awesome presentation.